Hello and welcome once again to the Speaking Truth to Power podcast. My name is Victoria Fenton and I'm here with my wonderful co-host.
Hello, I'm Alex Race, and today we are going to be talking about boundaries and the wonderful world of boundaries. And we're going to be diving into, well, I say diving into, we'll be broaching a number of topics within the boundary sense. So, friendship boundaries, relationship boundaries, and work boundaries, because they're all slightly different and they have all slightly different nuances in the way that you would approach it, because obviously you're involving different people, different aspects of yourself within each three of these subjects, so to speak.
Yeah, and it's three different environments in which the latitude for your behavior changes quite dramatically. So yeah, you get away with more in certain areas.
Yeah, you certainly can, especially, as I'm going to go into, let's start with the relationship boundaries.
Yeah.
Especially if you have a partner who lets you get away with stuff, who doesn't hold you accountable for your stuff. You want to call it your shit, your shadow, whatever it is. That's definitely something that's very, very interesting, and can also be seen as a lack of boundaries on their own part as well.
Yeah. And then, of course, we can get into the meta conversation of should relationships like that be under some kind of auspice of agreed rules before you even begin type thing. So all a very rich topic, and a topic that many people struggle with. I actually find this more and more the more kind of people I come into contact with in kind of my coaching world. It's like boundaries is a thing. It's a she said
it really is. Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely obvious. Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah. And so much hurt is done by feeling that somebody's overstepped your boundary, when sometimes it's our fault for not setting that boundary. And there's quite a lot of resentment that gets built up. So yeah. Before we launch into boundary discussions, do you want to do a quick update of how your week's been?
Yes. Okay. So before we dive in, ladies and gentlemen, my week has been good, but also quite sad. We had a passing away in our family. He's not quite family, but he was essentially like him and my mother and my cousins all kind of grew up together when they were teenagers, and he recently passed away at age 69 from a heart attack after heart surgery, which was very sad news because he was an absolutely wonderful man. Hassanu was kind of like a master of life, of learning how to enjoy life, and he always had a smile on his face, and no matter the situation he found himself in, he would always see the light at the end of the tunnel, which I have always had a tremendous amount of respect for and a tremendous amount of love for, because he was just he's also an incredibly handsome man, and he just got this beautiful smile, and he lights up the room, and he comes in the room, and he lights up the room when you see through the cloud of cigarettes, because he smoked 2 packs a day. So it'd be a case of any chance of a breath of fresh air, or is it just nicotine today? Because
oh dear.
But no, so that was a bit of a sad news, but otherwise I've had a good week, especially when I spoke to my branding team, branding and copywriting team, about my We Are Spellbound company. So for those of you who are listening, I am setting up a company which infuses herbal medicine into food. So the first off will be truffles, chocolate truffles. So each truffle has a specific remedy for it. So we have one for digestion, one for stress and anxiety, and one for focus. And then later on, we have ones for mood and for libido. But speaking with my branding team was absolutely wonderful. Beautiful vision that they have, and we're all very synced up together. So we had a great moment whereby they were asking me, so what type of things, a bunch of pictures were shown, and they were like, what pictures do you prefer? And I was like, I kind of prefer this. And both of them were like, yes, those are the ones we prefer too.
Yay. Oh, that's so exciting.
Which was very cute. And they were like, yes, we clearly have a very good poker face. I'm like, yes, just as good as I do, to be honest.
It's so lovely to hear, though, because this is like it's a passion project for you, and it's been a long time in the making, and a long time sort of lots of stuff coming up around the whole birthing of this whole thing. Yeah,
it's like birthing a child, except a business child.
A business
I'll
plan.
call it a business child.
We need to schedule in the children podcast, Alex. We need to make sure we do that
Yes,
podcast
absolutely. It's on the list of
on
podcasts
the
to go to.
list.
But tell me, how has your week been?
It's been full on. So most people, if you're a regular listener, will know that I'm doing a heck of a lot at the moment. In fact, so much so that one of my clients said to me yesterday, who was listening to our Gene Keys podcast, and she just said to me, is there anything you're not going to do in the next like few weeks and months? Like, where's the music going to come in? I was like, I've got no idea. Like, honestly, none. So yeah, it's very full on at the moment. I'm kind of in that icky middle stage where I'm separating from a lot of old stuff, but it's still hanging around because I've got commitments that I've made, through to like establishing new stuff, which is phenomenal and I'm loving it and it's flowing and it feels very organic. And yet, like, there's not enough hours in the day. So, and my new business keeps changing, taking shape in different ways, which is great. But like, because all my stuff is always going to be an extension of my own embodiment, like as I'm shifting and moving, it kind of shifts and moves. So I'm trying very hard to be very kind of surrendered to the process, and going back and finishing my memoir is a huge thing that I've got on my list of to-dos as well. So there's just a lot that I'm juggling, and I'm actually loving it because I'm surprised how okay I am in the fact that my life is super chaotic at the moment. So yeah, it's been a good week in terms of just being there for the right people this week as well, which I really appreciate when my life does that for me. It's like, oh, I needed to be in this place helping this person right now, and that means the world to me. So yeah.
Amazing. That is a fantastic news. I'm very happy to hear that for you.
Thank you very much. So yeah.
Absolute pleasure, as always.
I'm terrible at like I am terrible at accepting compliments. It's a universal thing about me. Like, I'm terrible at people saying well done, congratulations. So I'm trying to get better, just say thank you. So anyway, boundaries. That's going to be our main topic for the day. And I've said to Alex before we started this that I've spoken a lot in the last 2 weeks. So I'm going to let him lead this and take it away. And we will kind of have a very organic discussion. As you will have guessed, millions of listeners, these are all unscripted. Like, we have no idea what we're going to talk about. So like, we have a word and we'll riff off it.
Very much so. Like a surfer will rip off a wave, and either they will surf it perfectly, look amazing, or it's a disaster and they fall off the surfboard pretty quickly and like, right, well, next wave, please.
Yeah, Alex is just preparing you all for the train wreck that this podcast might be, basically, is what he's trying to say in code.
Just setting the bar low so that we can pass the bar very, very quickly and very, very easily.
All expectations exceeded. Yes, absolutely. Right.
Yeah, but boundaries. So, boundaries in, how should we put this? In the self-care and the trauma-based, I guess I don't want to call it the industry, but that side of the wellness spectrum is, it's quite well informed. That is very much, it's a current theme and it's becoming very popular on social media, on Instagram, I think on YouTube as well, because a lot of these Instagrammers have YouTube channels, and it's on TikTok as well, and on other social media platforms. So it's becoming more and more relevant and very, very much important, because we all need boundaries. Each and every single one of us needs boundaries, because it allows you to be sovereign, within your own energy, within your own right. And it's very much a form of empowerment, not a form of putting other people down. It's just about letting people know, this is where my limit is currently. It may change in the future, it may not, we don't know. But I always say the limit is set currently. Please don't ever step it. And please respect it. And let's say we dive into this with friends. If you have friends who pressure you to go, the greatest thing, peer pressure, is probably one of the greatest infractions infringements upon boundaries, and upon yourself. And we all have succumbed to peer pressure. Perhaps we have even been a part of peer pressure ourselves. The telling people, oh, let's go out, let's go do this, let's go do that. You know, for instance, I'm just going to quickly role play with Victoria here. I'm going to be the infringement friend, the peer pressure friend. You know, so like we're trying to go, Victoria, come on, let's go out. It's going to be an amazing night. You know, you have to come out.
Yeah, but I'm not really feeling it. I don't want to come out tonight.
No, 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 but Victoria, you don't understand. You have to come out. Like it's going to be amazing. Like so and so is coming. Like you need to be there.
Look, I love you and I'm always there for you, but I also have to be there for me. And right now, tonight, my energy's not vibing with coming out, even if so and so is going to be there.
But just one drink, it's fine. Just one drink, and then you go home, and you know I'll book you a taxi to go home. It's okay.
Oh, okay. No, really, no. And but this is like historically, I'd have gone into fuck. It's one drink. It's one drink. It's this thing.
Yeah.
Right. I even did
Right.
it. So I even did it last night. So I'd promised to go and see a friend of mine play piano. He plays piano regularly at a hotel, a couple of hotels in Cape Town. And I'd said Thursday or Saturday next week, I'm coming because I need to do it for me. By last night, my back was wrecking me because I injured it last weekend. I was like, and I was in this mode of, I really need to go out because I've made a commitment. How do I honor my boundary for my own self-care? And I sort of fucked up, actually. I sort of didn't message him at all.
Ghosted him.
I know. He then sent me a message later and it's like, because I'd put something on a story on Instagram. And he's like, you thought you were supposed to come and see me? And I was like, yeah. And I just explained the story and he was absolutely fine with it. And, you know, I put it in my diary for next week. But it is those kinds of things where sometimes honoring your boundary actually hurts somebody, you know, you let somebody down.
And it's usually unintentionally. You're not there to hurt them at all. You're just trying to protect your own energy for what's right with you within that moment. And you know that whole just come up for one drink. It's only one drink. I think everyone under the sun knows it's never just one drink. Like I don't think it's ever been just one drink. So if you do, you know, if you do decide to go out, you go out for 0 drinks and then you leave within short amount of time. But that role play was essentially, you know, Victoria, me trying to peer pressure, Victoria then setting her boundary, but then, you know, me also being that pushy friend who tries to guilt trip you, who tries to give you FOMO. For those of you who aren't familiar with that acronym, it's fear of missing out. So you try to guilt trip that person, make them fear of missing out, and they will then let down their own boundaries in order to feel as if they're not going to miss out on an amazing night, which, to be honest, you'll have many, many more in your lifetime.
And it's never an amazing night if you didn't want to go in the first place. I have learned that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. You go very begrudgingly and saying, "Oh God, okay, I'm here for now. Okay, let me have a few drinks and maybe I loosen up." But
and there's a slight distinction here. So there's a huge distinction, and maybe we should cover this as well. So there's a huge distinction between avoiding something because there's a fear, there's a discomfort, there's a reluctance, there's something, and actually having a firm boundary in place about self-care. So how do you identify your boundaries, Alex? How, like personally, how do you know where your boundaries are?
So I am very much a massive proponent of using your body as your greatest tool. Your body will tell you everything. And I do mean everything, you know. Like it'll tell you yes, no, I'm not sure. Get me the hell out of here. Or yes, please, I'm jumping in 2 feet. You know, the myriad of emotions and spectrums, you'll feel it within your body. And it's my personal way of learning where my boundaries are. One of my main ways of learning where my boundaries are. You know, if I feel that resistance that I don't really want to do it, I feel that kind of my body almost shutting down and being like literally physically rounding of the shoulders and just trying to protect myself. I know that's a no, and I know that's when I have to set my boundaries. And that's when I also then change my posture. So instead of being like this and saying no, what I will do is I will roll my shoulders back, stand up straight, and then say very calmly but very assertively no. And it's a very respectful no, but it's a very strong no that I'm an immovable mountain right now. Not going to happen.
And I get the sense that no has come with practice as well.
100%. Like this
Yeah.
hasn't this has been something over time which I've developed because I was very much Mr. FOMO. Like I need to go out because tonight's going to be an amazing night.
Mm.
And sometimes they were great nights. I'm not going to lie. Do I remember them? No, absolutely not. I remember very, very few of those nights.
Yeah. Alex is not
Um,
always the herbalist, virtuous, teetotal wizard that he is today.
No, no, no. I very much have dabbled in drinks and drugs. Very happy to admit it. To be honest, I have experienced and experimented with life, which is honestly a lot of fun. I regret nothing. I've met a lot of tremendous people, but again, not setting my boundaries back then with certain friends. Oh, just come out, or just take this, or just take that, loosen
Mm,
you up, or whatever. Like,
mm,
sure, okay, but realistically, the next few days, not really worth it, to be honest.
mm, mhm, mm.
But to me, when you use your body and then you get that strong inner, well, as we talk in human design, like that, very much a splenic hit of no. For
Yeah.
me, like it's a strong no, it's a strong yes. I've been able to, over time, develop the communicative ability to express why it's a no
Yeah.
or why it's a yes.
Mm,
And at times, a bit more punchily, because the other person is not listening. So you really just let them know strongly, like, this is absolutely not happening.
mm,
You can
mm,
go and do it. I'm going to stay here. This is the end of the conversation.
mm, mm.
Um,
And it's
and I
interesting
feel very
because
strong.
yeah, and what you're describing is a very physical sensation. And for anyone who was on the Human Design podcast or listened to it and is emotional, these kind of things with friends are prescient. So like he's asking me if I want to go out tonight, like, so
Yeah.
you don't need to ride a whole huge flipping wave over it. So there is, but it's very interesting the distinction that Alex is making, because he's talking about a physiological knowing. um, there are people in life who have a disconnection leaving pattern mentally, particularly.
Yeah.
That's experienced as a cognitive, I need to run away, I need to run away, I need to run away. Sometimes it transfers into the body where there's this kind of recoiling sense. Recoiling is very different from, oh, no, that doesn't feel right. And the only way to know the difference in your body is to get used to it over time and to understand that, like, life is always giving you opportunities. Like, you don't understand how many decisions you're making in a day. Like, you're making millions of them, from what you wear, from what you like, what, color shoes you put on, like, and all of that kind of stuff, to like what shampoo you use, to like all the meal decisions you've got, like, to just all of those things.
Yeah.
And all of those little tiny inconsequential moments are opportunities for you to get familiar with your knowing, in inner knowing, so that when it comes to bigger things, so whether I want to go out tonight, say I don't respect my own boundary, I go out, I feel annoyed at myself, I feel I don't have a good time, I'm probably too tired, and resent it the next morning. And there's not masses of consequences in that decision. Maybe it's an opportunity to learn that I should set my boundaries a little stronger. But there are definitely boundaries within relationships, within friendships, which are much, much, much more consequential. You know, it's often been like when a friend says, do you want to go into business together? Which is a huge, huge thing about, like, whew, like, yes, and like, because it completely changes the dynamic of your friendship, your relationship, your everything. And particularly in those situations, your relationship when you're working in the business becomes a very different boundaried situation to the relationship when you're in your friendship circle. So yeah.
100%. And speaking on that, I've experienced that firsthand recently. So exactly what Victoria's saying, your relationship naturally will change because you're seeing the other aspects of your friend which you may also not have seen before. So your relationship with them changes, your boundaries will change also, but you also have to be careful. This is also where boundaries come in very, very handily, and this is where we tie it in with work. Is you make the, well, I think it's important, you make the boundary within the work aspect, so you keep your friendship separate from work. When you work, your work version of you're not friends,
Mm,
you're friendly, if you know what I mean, and you have a good time, but like, you're business partners.
yeah.
You're not best buddies joking around having a drink. You're there for work.
Mm,
And then when you're out in your friend circle, you can be completely super friendly
mm,
in that old way.
Mm,
Potentially that maybe seem a bit more old school for certain people, but I think it's important to make that distinction, or at least to have the conversation
mm,
with a friend with whom you're going into business. It's like, okay, well, when we're in business mode, we're in business mode, and we're in creation mode, we're in drive mode,
mm,
um, which I think is completely different to when you are hanging out at a bar, at the beach, having a dance, or on the couch watching a movie, whatever it is. It's,
mm.
it's left, right, up, down. It's chalk, cheese, completely different.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I too have had this sort of situation, slightly different. But you know, I think you and I both have a very strong business sense. Our backgrounds have that about us.
Yeah,
And yet people might not get that from listening to our podcast, because we're very loving, compassionate human beings, and compassionate, like therapists, for want of better words,
yeah,
healers. And put us in a business context, and we have immense like capacity to see very clearly about business. So some experiences that have happened to me is like, you have a great relationship with someone who you share from the outside of the business some great ideas. You're just giving of your time, your energy, your free like thinking, bring you into the business, and suddenly you're doing exactly the same thing, but it's interpreted as critical because you're suddenly within a situation where your knowledge and your insights are actually directly related to something that you're working within, and you see so much more from within the business than from outside it. And suddenly it becomes a conflict, because without knowing it, you are actually overstepping someone else's boundary, even
yeah,
though they've invited you into the business to give of your worth. Um, and for me, in that situation, I was overstepping somebody's boundary. I shouldn't have been. Like, had I been anyone else saying the same things, that would not have been where the boundary lay for the person that I'm speaking about. So you end up with this, boundaries are not solid. Boundaries can never be solid. Boundaries are mutable, and boundaries are energetic in nature, which means that I might be a, functional medicine practitioner or a therapist or a healer or whatever we're calling me today. I have different boundaries with different patients, and that's not a it's not a thought through thing. It's a physiological thing in me which knows how much to give. And for my
yeah,
clients, it's very much a case of sometimes me laying a really firm boundary is the biggest service for them, because they have to self-own their healing journey. I can't heal anyone. They have to have the locus of control within. And if they're just continually calling me, like messaging me, can I do this,
yeah,
my absolute service to them is to set the boundary way further out than somebody who just asks a few questions. And I'm like, yeah,
yeah.
sure, I'll give you all these answers. And that's where intuition and knowing and trusting your own physiology happens. But within the business context, it's not okay to invite someone in to a business and then not respect their business acumen because your boundary is too far down in terms of like who can say what to you. It's very
Yeah.
tricky, very tricky.
It's very tricky, but and then also adding on to that, it's you know trying as much as possible not to bring in your wounds into the boundary and not reacting from a wounded place, because your whoever you work with will see a different side to you from previous and to work, and they're like, I wasn't quite ready for this. But there are moments within that friendship or that partnership where you have alluded to being a certain way and you have said, I am this way, and you
Mhm.
say you love it, and we're kind of going to see about that really
Yeah.
when it comes down to the business sense, because then, as you said, stuff gets, it almost feels like criticism, but it's not a criticism. It's a highlighting of something that can be made better. It's not saying, oh, this is terrible and you're the worst. It's like, by the way, did you know that there are these aspects which, if we work on them,
Mm,
can be made better, and
mm,
we don't have to be making mistakes.
mm.
uh, that, for unfortunately for a lot of people, comes across as, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy,
Totally.
uh, you don't love me, you don't see me, you don't respect me.
Mhm.
And that's where the boundaries get very blurred, and that's where it's very important to have that boundary with that person of saying, listen, this is what I am saying. I am
Mm,
not saying that you are not worthy of love, that you are not worthy of respect, that I am not thankful for you.
yeah.
I am just letting you know that these are the things that need to be worked on at this point in time. so we can get from A
Mm.
to B.
Mm.
And this is what I am saying. Please see it as just that. Please do not bring in your own shit
Mm.
into this and make it something that it isn't.
Mm. And actually, like, the key to all of this, particularly in business, is communication. Okay, it's not, apparently.
Yeah, it's communication, but with the intent to understand.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you can communicate, we can talk, but then if we're doing this, the whole time, it might as well just communicate to a wall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And within that, the sentences of please don't bring your own shit into it probably don't come up in that conversation because it's you. I think we touched on this before, but weaponizing information, weaponizing your ability to have a mature conversation is not okay.
No.
And for me, there's been times where I have the conversations with someone like you about what I'm going through in this thing, so I can get all of my ducks in a row about what's happening, the dynamic. And then I don't necessarily always share that with the people who I'm having the struggles with. In fact, oftentimes, if I can just see that this is not a conversation that's worth having, I will leave. Like, I will not be around a situation where I am seen to be triggering somebody because they are not able to accept my light and what I'm bringing. I'd rather not have to succumb to being in their little box and under their kind of boundary than stick around. And I can tell that some people listening might be, oh yeah, but I work in like a 9 to 5 in an office. How does this apply to me? Is that, well, that's your choice. You can choose whether this applies to you or not. And I have always been ruthless in everything in my life is done with absolute integrity. There's no area where I'm doing one thing different, because how you do one thing is how you do everything. And I've never been able to make the compromise and just go, oh, well, I'll just stay in this little tiny box in my 9 to 5 and then I'll be me in the rest of my life. It just doesn't work for me, but it works for some people. Some people have that kind of ability to just phone it in, do the job, like get the money, get the paycheck, and then the rest of their life is about the integrity piece. But that has to be an individual decision. And my question to anyone who chooses that would be, what is the cost to you of not owning your true integrity for 9 to 5, Monday to Friday?
Exactly. And for those of you who are working that 9 to 5 or whatever working hours that you may have, what I would suggest is, if you are feeling as if you are being taken advantage of, it's because you have literally allowed that person to take advantage of you, because you haven't stood up for your own right and for what you think you are worth.
100%.
You will do it from people pleasing. Oh no, because I want my boss to like me, or if I don't do this, maybe I get fired, or the myriad of excuses is there. And we're not going to go into the absolute myriad of excuses because this is not that type of podcast. It's about saying, no, actually, I can't do this piece of work right now. I have this project due in at this date, and I have this due in at this date. I don't have the capacity to do that right now. Could you either wait until I finish a project, or if it's urgent, would you mind passing it on to someone else? Or if you really want to be a dick, do you want to do it yourself, you lazy shit? Maybe obviously not use that.
We don't want to get anyone fired, Alex. Like,
we're joking. We don't actually do that. But just say that I don't have the capacity right now to do it because I have this project due in for this and for this and for this. Or the other way around it is, you can ask, is this an emergency? Is this urgent? And does this take precedence over all the other projects that I'm currently working on? If it is, can you then please delay the due date of those other projects so I can get this project done for you as fast as possible? And right there, you set a boundary that, hey, I know my worth. Also, I know how important this may be to you, but I also need to know that my time and my energy is going to be respected, that this is not going to affect me negatively. Yeah. And I'm going to get overly stressed, overly emotional, anxious, overworked to do this piece of work right now, when it may not be necessary, or other stuff could be lengthened out
Yeah.
so that the burden is eased. Or we can always ask, can we do this as a group? Or is there someone I can do this with? Or are there other people who can take my workload off so I can do this?
Mm.
Or when I do this, can I then have one or two other people to help me with this project so we can get it done by that due date if you are unable to change it?
Yeah. So all the things that Alex is saying is all about respecting your energy so that you are not paying the price for someone else's lack of organization. So when you ask the question of, we all know that there's shit managers in the world. There's people who've got into managerial positions and they really should not have got there.
No.
And oftentimes these things, particularly in sort of middle management, is not merit-based, it's time, duration, and the job based. So ultimately, when you ask the question, is this urgent? There are people who will say yes, because they have no concept of what urgent actually means. So the qualifiers that Alex gave in just now about like, where does this fit on my priority scale? Like, you're the one who's going to put all the deadlines. This is the amount of man hours that this takes. You prioritize for me. I will do it in your order, but it cannot be all at once. It cannot be, and there are industries where it is the dumb thing to push people to their absolute limits. And I have clients in those industries, and I'm very, very, very clear that there is no compromise in this kind of rule, because the price you're paying is with your energy and with your life. Basically, it's not because you want to go out on the lash on a Friday night. It's because you can't keep giving 24/7 and not have some penalty paid physiologically, emotionally, mentally, within kind of the balance. I hate to say the word, but work-life balance. And there is a need to completely have integrity, even in those industries. We could think of them like lawyers. And I knew a lawyer, and this wasn't long ago, where they just made them work through the night. It was horrendous.
Yeah.
And it's like, I get,
M&A,
yeah,
brutal.
like, and all of these kind of things. And obviously healthcare, conventional medicine, 12-hour shifts that end up being 13, 14, 15 hours by the time you've done the paperwork, because there's not enough staff, there's too many demands, there's too many patients per person. Ridiculous. So there's this element of, we can all understand that the consequence might be losing our job. We get that. Scary, money. However, you will be surprised how much the universe and energy shows up for you when you are totally in your core of embodiment and absolute integrity. And you have to try it to know, because you just sitting here and just saying, just be you and do the things. It's like, it's a bit cognitively challenging. But why I'm even here doing this kind of job today is because I left an incredibly well-paid job as an executive assistant and personal assistant in the centre of London. And I did a series of those jobs, stupidly well paid, basically abuse. They're paying me to abuse my being and my energy and my time. I mean, my boss was lovely. It was not his fault. It's just that culture of ridiculously long days. Yes, I got a lunch break. Did I ever take it? Probably not. And you're sort of associating the success with the money that comes into the bank at the end of every month, and also the perks that come with some of these things. And yet I realized very strongly that, hang on a second, my health is suffering, my well-being is suffering, my mind is suffering. Where is my boundary? And my boundary was, no, sorry, I don't care how much you pay me. And he rang me like several months later. Was like, Victoria, I need you back. Like, I'll increase your salary. I'll put an extra bonus. What can I do to get you back? And I didn't say it because I was in the middle of Blackheath. I was in the middle of Greenwich Park. He rang me, and I didn't say it, but I really wanted to say, change the entire culture of the way you run your business. Then I'll come back.
Yes, that is the way. That is the way. That is probably a whole podcast within itself, to be quite honest. But
business culture,
business culture. Oh yeah, massive, huge.
And
it's
such an interesting thing for people like myself and Alex, because
write that down.
The way we do things are the way we both do things, and I think it comes through just time under tension. But it's very much like, this is us. Like, if we build a business, it's going to be built in a ethical, compassionate, like beautiful way. And we're both doing that at the moment. Alex has more kind of moving parts to his, but I'm considering expanding teams, all of those kinds of things. And the key for me is always like, I'm not better than anybody else, even if I give myself the title of CEO. I mean, most people in entrepreneurial startups just make up titles anyway. Let's just be honest. Like,
it's just a made-up title to just because you need a title, especially when you go for investments and they need to see who does what.
honestly,
But when you're an entrepreneurial business, you kind of do a lot of the same things, and your roles kind of overlap.
yeah.
You just get a fancier title.
And the culture of the businesses that we will set up will very much be those kind of heterarchy. Everyone's equal, doing different jobs, but your opinion is completely valid within that company. And there's no one thing that's prioritized above and beyond another. And the communication thing's huge again. Like everyone in the business needs to know everything else that's going on in the business when you're tiny. Like this is not necessarily, big conglomerations, but it's just respect. It is just respect to tell somebody where they fit, how much worth they bring, and that they can bring anything that they have to the table. And that's exactly what we're talking about with boundaries. It's like there are times when your boundaries should be firm, and there are times when you should just expand them and let people into your world. There's no kind of need to like walls. Boundaries are not walls.
No. And I think that's something that probably may get confused. I think a boundary is a wall, and it's not. Imagine it's almost like water. It's always in motion. It's always fluid, and it will move. Kind of like with the tides. Sometimes it will push out more.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it will retract more, and a lot of it also depends on how you are feeling that day, where you are emotionally, where you are physically and spiritually. Like, what can you handle at that given point in time? Today may be much less than, let's say, next week, and that's okay. And then it's just all about communicating that with helping the other person understand where you are coming from and why you're coming from that way.
Yeah.
um, it's really important that it's not just this is this because of this. It's like, well, listen, you give them a little bit more, more the tasting menu, so that they can understand what's actually happening. And you provide a better platform for open discourse with one another. And also you are actually, in essence, a light bearer, a torch bearer of how to do things. You are the example that you want others to be. Like, you walk the talk. You want to set boundaries. You want to learn to do it yourself. Be the first one to do it and show others the way, especially if they don't know how to do it themselves.
Which brings us on to boundaries in relationships, which is where boundaries can often be super tricky, because we're not given a relationships manual in school. Like, we're not told how to relate, particularly like romantically. Or
ever. There's no manual for this.
Yeah. So like, it's a lot of it's experimentation. And yet this comes back to the kind of, what is the contract that you have with yourself to show up? Because you feeling like your boundaries are being crossed or not respected is actually an indication that you are not respecting yourself enough to set a firm boundary. So within relationships, this is where things become really kind of watery and fluid. And yet communication is still the key, because it's always worth working on relationships. It's never kind of, oh no, that's, well, depends which boundaries are being crossed. Obviously, if there's overt abuse, particularly physical, but also mental, gaslighting, all of that kind of stuff, that's a firm no. That's it's not always a firm no. It's a firm, can you educate the person? And if not, no. And we'll all have different boundaries. And so for me, I will happily, honestly share one of my really firm boundaries in friendships as well. Less so in friendships, but definitely in intimate relationships. Because of a lot of my history, the frequency of dishonesty and lying, I find physiologically difficult. And I really don't like it.
I find it abhorrent.
Yeah. And for me, I sense it before I'm cognitively aware of it as well. So I feel very unsafe and very uncertain. And I often don't know why. And me being me, I make it all about me. So it's, oh my God, it's my fault. I'm not good enough. I'm not doing this enough. I'm not showing up enough. I'm not giving enough. I'm not, like, it must be my fault. And then suddenly the lie is always revealed. Like, we've all seen the movies, you'd never get away with lying. But anyway, when the lie is revealed, I suddenly understand that it's that frequency underneath. It makes me feel so unsafe. So I have an absolutely firm boundary in my aura, which is, don't lie to me. I can take anything. You can be unfaithful, you can, look at porn, you can stare at somebody on the street, you can want to have any kind of anything. I can take that if you tell me. But not telling me, we're on a short leash to end. So, and that is something that I know about myself because of how honest I am and how I show up. And actually, it's funny because it's changing who I attract recently into my world, into all of my worlds. And yet there's been a lot of times where I've had to attract the liars just so I learned that this was a really firm no for me. So if you're in the middle of a relationship where you're struggling, look at it as in, what are you learning from it? Like, are you learning where your firm no's are?
Beautifully said. Very beautifully said. It's that aspect of lying is, it's the ultimate boundary crosser for me.
Completely.
It's like you can't lie and expect to get away with it and expect there to be trust. Like, you've broken trust, and in my opinion, once you break trust, it's nigh on impossible to build that trust back up.
Yeah.
Because that boundary has been truly crossed. And a part of me feels that the person who's crossed that boundary, like, you kind of need to pay the price for it. You really need to learn that life lesson that you can't do this and get away with it, and it has to hurt. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I mean that if you're truly going to learn that lesson of, oh, I better never do that again, it's going to have to hurt you. Because you're never really going to learn it. If it's kind of like, oh, well, I kind of got away with it, and nothing really happened, like, I got a little bit hurt, you'll do it again.
And to be clear, we're not talking about, so it's always worth working on relationships. Infidelity is a key one. So infidelity and dishonesty in my head are ongoing, long-term or repeated offenses. It's not, oh shit, I snogged somebody at the pub and I've come home and I've told you about it immediately. That's workable because that's honesty. And that's like, well, is there something wrong in our relationship? Are you not feeling fulfilled here? Or was it just a drunken thing? What's going on underneath it? Was it just a tone? That's workable because that's honesty. And always, I mean, this is coming up so much for me personally, professionally, all the things at the moment. It's often not the thing that happens or the event or the emotion. It's all the shit we associate with it. So in this sort of situation, it's like, it's not the event of snogging somebody down the pub. It's then you lie about it. Then you hold on to guilt. Then the whole trust basis of the relationship just evaporates.
Yeah. And I think that's where this is where I think for different people, different boundaries come in. For instance, for you, your boundary would be, oh, it's, as long as you're honest, you snog down the pub, we can talk about it, we can work for it. For other people, it's like, you snog someone at the pub, we're done.
Yeah.
Like, this is where everyone has to figure out for themselves, all right, where is my boundary and where is it that I feel comfortable with setting my boundary? Is there an opportunity for me maybe to push out of my comfort zone with my boundary a little bit? Is it the right time for me to push out of that comfort zone a little bit to maybe try and experience something new?
Yeah.
You will need to honestly intuitively figure that out for yourself, but also experiment with it. And for me, for instance, if my partner, like, I'll be different to you, Victoria. Like, I'm very much a person, if you have snogged someone down the pub, even if you've told me, my trust in you has been broken because I've given you, well, the way I am is like, I will give you my full trust and everything, but I will also, I'll let you know that if you do this, to me is broken, man. And then if you do it, not only have you broken the boundary, you've broken trust, and for me, like, finito. It's, to me, it's irreparable at that point in time.
Yeah.
Because you've shown to me that you can't be in integrity and you can't respect my boundaries, and therefore are there other things that potentially you don't respect?
Interesting.
It very turns in more into a philosophical type of questioning, because my principal value is like, I would never ever cheat on anyone. It's just for me, it's like the ultimate disrespect.
Yeah.
To you as the couple.
Yeah.
To you as an individual.
Yeah.
But to the other person as well.
Yeah.
So it's like a trifecta of disrespect, and to me, your foundations have completely crumbled. So it's not something I would feel comfortable like saying, okay, let's try and make this work, because you've shown yourself to be, I can't rely on you. And maybe it's just at this point in time we need to go our separate ways, and maybe in 6 months, a year, 2 years, whatever it is, we can try again, maybe if I feel as if there's been change. But again, the aspect of communicating the boundary of, this is what I like, this is what I don't like. Out of this relationship, this is kind of where I set the limits. If you want to look at other people, porn, Instagram, like people's photos, don't care.
Yeah.
You talk about what it is you are comfortable with. But it's funny because let's say within the polyamory community, something like that would be completely okay, could be completely okay, is what I should say, because you have to communicate your roles within the relationship polyamory, but also your relationship roles within actually something like non-ethical monogamy. Ethical non-monogamy. Ethical non-monogamy.
I was going to say non-ethical. What?
Non-ethical monogamy. So you just mean cheating and going to the strip clubs. Okay, good sir. We are on that little, big fish, little fish cardboard box. Train.
Okay, I'm going to reveal the secrets of the podcast. Beforehand, we were talking about boundaries, and I was doing like the Vogue with my face, boundaries, and Alex took this to mean big fish, little fish cardboard box in clubs. So he said he would slip it into the podcast somewhere. I did not expect it to be there. Oh, very funny. And he did sing to me. I'm not going to let him subject us, our dear listeners, to Alex's singing, but he has sung to me 2 songs today. I feel privileged to be. Although this is my hard boundary, Alex, that will not be shared on the podcast.
This is a hard boundary, and one which I'm very, very respectful of. And Victoria knows that the music industry have banned me from releasing singles and albums because they just know it would be unfair competition. All the albums in the top 10 would be my albums, because my voice is that of an angel sent down from heaven itself. Obviously, if you believe in heaven. If you don't, then I was sent down and blessed with the voice of Mariah Carey and Whitney Houston, and maybe Luciano Pavarotti combined. It's
just to give context, guys, Alex was singing Come On Eileen.
Come on, Eileen.
Stop.
Caroline.
Yes, we did all of that.
We did all of that. But this is where our boundary happens on the podcast.
Definitely.
Victoria gets plenty of love songs sung to her via voice note on a regular basis.
This is actually not true, just to be really clear.
Very
funny. Someone did ask me the other day, we had the conversation about relationships, like sacred union relationships. Somebody did say, why aren't you two dating? I was like, I can think of so many reasons. Just like, no. We'd be disastrous as a couple. It would just like, no, that's not a thing. Very humorous.
No. Very humorous. But anyways,
we'd be great though. We'd have great boundary conversations of we'd be like our communication would be on point. And just to say as well, Alex and I have had arguments where you crossed a boundary of mine, and I was like, was something you said, and it was a very offhand comment, and you meant it in one way, and I didn't need to
Because
hear
we
it
were
at that point.
messaging.
Yeah, we were
Because we were
messaging.
messaging,
Yeah.
and the meaning got lost in the
In the
messaging.
message, and I think you'd meant it as a joke. It was about connecting with somebody, and I'd kind of made an offhand comment, and you'd made a joke, and I just kind of ghosted you for a bit, and I just disappeared.
Oh yeah, I
Because it
remember
took me a
that.
while to work out why I'd got like kind of jarred by it. And to be honest, this brings me to a really important point about what are boundaries for. I've mentioned that they're about protecting energy. That's a huge part of it. The most important part that boundaries are for, particularly in relationships, friendship relationships, romantic relationships, is safety. So I'd said something really open to Alex, and he'd said something back which seemed offhand to me. It wasn't, was intended as a joke. But in that moment, and in the context of what else was going on in my life, which is a really important thing to say, because your boundaries will change depending on how much stress is going through your world. But in that moment, I'd felt like the safe space that was me able to say something honestly and openly in our interactions had just been removed. It was like, no, I'm not allowed to be me. What? Hang on. Oh, that, and it felt awful. A couple of days later, I kind of raised it. And absolutely accurately, Alex said to me, I'd really have appreciated it if you'd raised this at the time that it happened, because I could have explained it. Great thing to say, because absolutely he was right. But then I also explained that actually I really didn't know when it happened why it was such a trigger to me, and I had to actually go away for the weekend and kind of slot in all the things that had happened in my life, and it was happening in a couple of areas, and that's when I saw it, and I came back and communicated that to Alex. And from that moment it was like, oh, okay, we're all good, we're fine, this is absolutely on point. And like, that's how to healthily commune about boundaries and about, you know, how to move through these challenges when somebody steps over one. Because oftentimes, even if they do step over one, they don't actually mean to, particularly if you're friends.
Yeah.
They are about safety. They're about what feels safe to you, and what is a thing that puts a fracture through the cement of your kind of connection.
Very, very, very well said. And actually, a perfect example of boundaries and how communication with the intent to understand is so important, and
Mm,
how, Victoria and I are very open people. We're very much heart on our sleeve type of people. So we're very honest, but we also know how to communicate, and we know the words in which we want to use, and but we also understand that sometimes messaging is not the greatest platform to write something,
yeah.
because Victoria was in her, let's call it, in her emotional state at that point,
Hmm.
and I sent a message in my emotional state, which, let's say, hers was here, mine was here,
Yeah.
and therefore it didn't cross. It literally went like that,
Yeah. Yeah.
which creates that massive disparity in understanding, which creates unnecessary and unfortunate
Yeah.
conflict,
Yeah. Yeah. And it
within
was the
you and
classic.
within the other person.
It was the classic, you'd meant it as a joke. And I was like,
Yeah,
and I didn't take it as a joke. And, you know, as you will probably tell from our communication, like most of mine and Alex's chat is like hilarious joke after hilarious joke. I mean, we think they're hilarious, let's be honest. It's
yeah,
probably not universally hilarious.
no,
But
but to us it is, and that's all that matters.
yeah. But in that moment, I was not in the space of taking a joke. And it's interesting because messaging is a really bad way to do things at times. I did it this week. I sent a message, actually last week, I sent a message to somebody who I don't particularly know very well. I was trying to be compassionate. It just came over all kinds of wrong. And she took it very personally. And then she chose to tell me how it landed for her was really like as if I had a problem with her. Why didn't I just come out and say it directly? I was like, well, no, that's not what was going on. I didn't have a problem with you. I was like trying to give you compassion. She was like, oh, but like now you're telling me this, what am I supposed to do? And I'm like, well, like, let's just like, it's okay. I'm pleased that you didn't feel like, but all of my kind of stop reacting. She was not there to listen to that. And I ended up saying like, you don't know me. You don't know how like just honest and compassionate I am. Like if I'd have had a problem with you, I
Yeah.
probably would have said, I've got a real problem with you. Like, because that's what I do. Or just not said anything, like for God's sake, like I don't like need to reach out to somebody totally random to say something. But yeah, no, it ended. This is great guidance for people who are light workers, because it ended with a, I'm just telling you how it landed. Take it or leave it. There's no victim or hero here. Love and light.
Oh.
Oof. Then blocked me.
Oh.
This is Facebook DMs. Then blocked me. And I was like, because I tried to say, like, I came at you with one thing and you've been like super defensive. She was like, oh, let's just leave it. I was like, I'm not going to leave it. You've twisted this round, made it about me, projected a load of shit onto me. Like, no, this is not how this goes. And she was like, love and light. And that is an easy way to spiritually bypass, completely avoid the issue. I got mass compassion for this person. That's why I reached out in the first place. And yet sometimes things get lost in translation. And what we need to do in that area is own our triggering. So what happened with me and Alex, we're making it into a big thing. It was like a couple of days where I was just like, oh, I had to go away and own my triggering. And if anyone saw my Instagram post this week, I literally walked through the process of owning my triggering. Like, I noticed the trigger. I go where I realize it's about me. If it's about me, what am I either not giving to myself or giving to myself that person is actually just reflecting back to me? What are the themes coming up? How can I remedy this for me? How can I then share with the person, if necessary? How can I go back to the person, apologize for the reaction, explain the process, and take it all back? It sounds like a lot of work. It takes a few minutes. You just need to think it through. You just need to allow it to be.
Very much so. And it's funny, like you had that experience, and I had a similar experience after I'd made a post on biohacking, and I had a certain individual DM me and like torrents of abuse, just like misreading everything I'd written. I was trying to explain to him, like, very carefully, like, this is exactly what I meant. This is what was said. There's no I'm not too sure what you're trying to infer into this. But certain people don't want to hear it. This is the thing whereby when you feel
attacked,
hurt, you may feel attacked, you may feel victimized. You kind of just go on the attack, and you just you just vomit onto the other person. And that's where having your boundaries is really important. And if they are unwilling to listen to your boundaries, especially the easiest thing about when it's messaging, you can just walk away. You do not have to reply to the message. You can just let them write it out. And that's what I did with this person. I just let them write it out. I was like, all right, cool, okay, well, you're just gonna carry on writing. I'm just gonna let you write. And there's no point trying to calm the flames down when put out the flames. And if anything, it's just stoking them even more. So you allow that person to do what they need to do. And within your own self that you were honest, you had integrity, you were trying to do the right thing, and that's that. And sometimes it doesn't work out. And sometimes it doesn't work out, and that's okay. It's not always going to work out. That is okay. That is when you walk away.
And that's the thing with this conversation that I had over text message beginning of this week. It's like, my boundary is, don't make it about me when it's not about me. And yet in sharing that, I further push this person into her kind of survival brain, like trauma trigger loop, and they just blocked me. And that's okay. I mean, it hurt for a while. Like, whenever anybody's criticizing you for how something landed, the problem is in them, not in you, because it's how it landed, not what you said. So, and I don't imagine they've even read their messages enough to grasp that. And, just to be really clear about what you've just said, we've had a previous podcast where we have mentioned this person by name and said mad respect to them, because that's how we feel. And it doesn't mean that we have to love everything that the biohacker community bring. And we're allowed to set our boundary about where we think healing happens, and how there is a massive conflict of integrity when you're sort of giving a bit of respect to the mindset stuff and then jabbing yourself with peptides every 10 seconds. That's incongruous is what that is.
Yes, steroid hormones are not something to be injecting, ladies and gentlemen. They affect you in many ways which are not good.
Particularly if you're not like even competing in anything. Like, I mean, if you want to do it because you're competing in a steroid-driven weightlifting stuff, crack on, knock yourself out. Do it with support.
Absolutely. Yes. But also do it under the guidance of people who can tell you what to do.
And how to come off it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Very much so. But I want to get back to relationship boundaries quickly,
Yes.
because
Mm.
there are different aspects of relationship boundaries, and like one of the things I think we should touch on is actually boundaries within sex within relationships.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah.
Simply because, for instance, I'll just use myself as an example. I am into a little bit more of what can be called kink, and I am no, yeah, it's me. It's what I like. It's what I like doing. There's certain aspects which drive joy, and for certain people, they love it, and for
Mhm.
certain people, you don't. And you're what people call in the kink world. There's a term for people who aren't into it. It's called vanilla, and it's meant with respect. It's not meant to mean, oh, shame on you. It's just a term,
Yeah.
and you have to set your boundaries as to what you're comfortable doing. Do you want to experiment,
Mhm.
or do you want to just do that, or are you actually an asexual person, or do you not really enjoy sex? Because there are people who don't enjoy sex, and to them it's not what makes them happy. It doesn't really get them off. Sometimes it's literally just the intellectual stimulation, and other components of the relationship, which to them is more important than
Yeah.
the physical. We
Mhm.
can really dive into that on a whole spiritual level in another podcast, because
Yeah.
there's a lot to unpack on that one.
Mm.
Um, but with sex, it's important to understand what you're comfortable doing with your partner
Yeah.
and what you're not, and having that open communication of, if you're embarrassed about wanting to try something,
Mm.
I would say, as much as you can, just be honest with your partner and say, you know what, I would like to try and experiment or experience this.
Mm.
Would you be up for trying, or would you be open to helping me indulge in this?
Mm.
And that's where you can learn a lot about yourself.
Mhm.
Not and I don't mean through this. I mean also through the sexual experience, but I mean from yourself in learning to communicate that, most likelihood a vulnerability, because you feel, because you have something you want to experience and you're not too sure if the other person is going to be okay with it, so you're in a vulnerable position because you're opening yourself up
Mm.
to something completely new.
Mm. Mm. And
So
sex is a
having
really
that,
like sex is a super, it's a really wrong area for modern humanity because it's been so suppressed, repressed,
yeah,
pushed under the carpet. Like I even mentioned it earlier, if you want to watch porn, it's like, well, why do we think that watching porn is a bad thing? Like why, like I'm pretty sure in ancient tribal communities, they all watched each other have sex. That's kind of like, probably joined in. I don't know. I'm not an anthropologist. I don't care. It's like, it's one of those things where sexual proclivities are often entrained into us by what we've been around. Either we've been
yeah,
repressed, so we end up on the more kind of expressive side, or we've been repressed, so we end up really asexual, and potentially that's something that like is not actually natural. It's just a learned behavior because of fear, because of conditioning, because of bad trauma in the past. Um, and it's rarely something that people feel comfortable talking about because we're told that you shouldn't feel comfortable talking about it. Like a
yeah,
friend of mine the other day is like, I'm really uncomfortable because I'm suddenly in a community where there's loads of like half naked girls on my Instagram and I don't know how to feel about it. He's married and it's like, I don't know, like I don't have any kind of, I'm not a prude about any of this kind of stuff. And yet,
yeah.
I mean, communicating to somebody where your sexual preferences are is always a dodgy conversation. And I really don't think it should be. Do you?
Absolutely not. No, but it's one of those taboo things, and
Mm.
it's in an odd way. I feel as if it's remained taboo. One reason is because people like to do things that they're not meant to be doing. Like when you're a kid and you get told no,
Mm.
don't do that.
Mm.
Higher than likely odds, you're going to go do that thing,
Mm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So from a young age, we're ingrained with no. You mean challenge accepted, good
So
sir.
yeah. No, and
No.
yeah, and it's that kind of like, and it is so many things get pushed on and parenting comes in here. So like often little boys will start playing with their penises and like parents go, no, don't do that. What they really mean is doesn't that feel great? Doesn't that feel amazing? However, probably don't do it in the lounge in front of grandma. I think that's probably more what they mean, you know? So, but in the moment, sorry for anyone not watching the YouTube, I've just given Alex an absolute heart attack of hysteria. But it's it's that kind of vibe where parents say no, they don't say yes and if we could just learn the yes and conversation, we'd have a whole different sexual like world, because you know it would be yeah. So just for my like ridiculous interest, like, is this something that you kind of sit down with your lady friends and kind of be like, these are the rules, or how does this happen?
Okay, so I don't have not so much rules, but I will communicate what I like. Are you open to this? Is that something you've tried? If not, would you like to try? Is there anything that you want to experience yourself? What do you want me to be a part of that? Do you want to do it with other people? For me, it's very much an open communication, and I would say I'm open to most forms of communication as to what you want to do or what you want to hear. Like, I'm very much what's known as more of a sensual dom, so I enjoy giving pleasure to people. I also love receiving pleasure, don't get me wrong, but my natural thing is to be more assertive, very, very masculine within that domain. But I imbue the feminine. It's weird. I imbue both the feminine and the masculine within that aspect, and I within those, the only rules I have are, don't share this with other people who aren't directly involved in this. Like, I'm very private with what I do and with whom I do it with. Please don't share what we do with other people. If I want to share, and I will ask you, are you comfortable with me sharing X, Y, and Z with other people? And if you aren't, I won't share. If you are, I will share, but I will never generally mention you by name. I will mention the things that I have experienced and things like that. So I'm open to you, sharing your experiences just by name. Keep my name out of your mouth, please. But
There's
I'm
so many
always
jokes
open.
I could have made at that juncture.
I know.
I know. Don't do that to me on the podcast, Alex.
I mean, I had to just put it out there.
No, stop now. And it's interesting though, because Alex is very open with me about like stuff that's going on in his life and in his sex life, and we have an open conversation. Most of the time we're using nicknames and countries of origin rather than people. Like, I don't know any of the names of any people that Alex has been with particularly. So there's a deep respect for the privacy of that bedroom environment, for want of better words. I'm saying bedroom, I'm assuming bedroom, God knows with Alex. But there's a respect.
It's lockdown. We'll say it's just the bedroom, as it's the lockdown era. So yes.
Got it. Okay. So yeah, there's a mad respect, but no shame. So like, it's not like he's keeping it private because it's shameful. It's keeping it private because it's private. So is it the kind of thing where you like have to have safe words and stuff like that? As like no, this is too far.
For certain people, they will want safe words, and it's very useful to know safe word, because it may be too much. You get too sensitive, or there's a bit too much pain, or whatever it is. You're like, I need to safe word, please stop. And you're like, okay, I can hear that. You wait. You allow them to regain composure, or you regain composure yourself. Are you ready to go? I always ask the consent for question. Are you ready to go again, or do you need more time? Depending on which one it is, you proceed, and that's that really. But safe words are great, and you hear a myriad for whatever reason. Pineapple seems to be a very popular safe word. It's I mean, not my safe word and not others who I know, but speaking with people within, let's say, who are familiar with the polyamory scene, they say that pineapple, for whatever goddamn reason, is a very popular safe word.
I don't think we need to find more jokes about pineapples, Alex. That's not an area we need to go into either.
No, but pineapples and donuts, you know,
Sure.
probably a better combination than pineapple and pizza, is all
Mhm,
I'm going to say.
mhm.
Especially glazed donuts.
Exactly.
But you know, safe words are.
Alex
Okay,
has
I'll
lost
just
it.
regain my composure.
We are like dropping a few too many in jokes today, so we've probably
In
lost a
jokes,
load of people. But Alex and I
you're
will set up a business in the future at some point with pineapple glazed donuts.
absolutely infused with herbs to
Yeah.
help you with wonderful, wonderful things.
Yes.
But no, safe words are great. They really help you establish a boundary and an
Yeah. Yeah.
open boundary and
Yeah.
one that has to be respected,
Yeah.
which is very, very powerful because you know where that person's boundary is. You
Yeah.
hear
Yeah.
it, you honor it,
Mm,
and that's that. It's really
mm,
that simple. It's a very simple but powerful act, and I think
mm.
it's very noble of the person to then respect that boundary.
And that's a really important point that I want to jump onto because I've had a few conversations this week about this is a massive segue away from Alex, obviously just made that point incredibly clear, but I've had a few conversations this week about sexual abuse. In every time, the woman, it's been women. That's not to say that women are the only recipients of sexual abuse. I think a lot of boys, men have been abused as well, but this is just women who are speaking to me. In every occasion this week, the woman either wasn't raped or something happened. So the rape that was about to happen didn't happen. And the way the woman was telling me the story was, so it wasn't that bad, which just to put it out there as a kind of boundary thing, if ever
Mm.
anyone is overstepping your boundary of physical sovereignty, of respect for your body, of respect for your space, of respect for your firm no, doesn't matter how far they get, doesn't matter how much they do to you, it doesn't matter whether the groping was on top of your clothes or underneath them, and it doesn't matter whether there was any kind of sexual like completion of anything at all. It is abuse. It is an overstepping of a massive boundary, and it's not
Yeah,
okay.
no, it's definitely not okay. And you bring that up, and we've had this English actor, Noel Clarke, who
Okay.
has been in the news recently. After it was funny because he received the BAFTA for like outstanding award, and this past few days, something like 20 women have come out against him, essentially launching sexual abuse allegations against him.
Wow.
And many co-workers of his have said, about time, you know, karma, whatever. So, and they were like, you know, the secret is finally out. So you have a lot of these aspects which happen, uh, and you know, because of people in positions of power,
Hmm.
your boundary as a human sovereign being is not respected because they are technically worth more to the industry than you are. And
Hmm.
that's a whole different, you know, talk on boundaries, especially within work. And you know, when your boundaries have been crossed, I think this is something we haven't touched on, but we probably should.
Hmm.
When your boundaries have been crossed, especially, you know, from a completely inappropriate perspective,
Hmm.
bring it up immediately with those on the higher ups.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, bring it up. You know, write a formal complaint. If you have HR, go to HR, go to the CEO, or if it's a CEO of the business, then go to the shareholders of the business,
Mhm.
and then tell them, by the way, the CEO has been doing this and this, or you know, whatever it is. You highlight it so people don't get away with shady behavior,
Hmm.
and that is a way to honor your boundary, but also help you honor the boundaries of others
Hmm.
who have been potentially abused,
Hmm.
but also in the future who have the potential to become abused.
Yeah, and it's this is not to endorse every hysterical comment that came up in the Me Too kind of movement.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly that. Exactly.
just because as a woman, I'm very displeased with some of the hysteria that came out and some of the stuff that was
Yeah.
not um, just not a big deal. And yet, you know, microaggressions can lead to macroaggressions. So this isn't, you know, like no man has to like no man has to wonder whether they can say that someone looks beautiful today. That's that's not a thought that should have to go through a man's head.
No.
But they should think twice about, you know, patting you on the bum or something along those lines. They should think twice about, you know,
Yeah.
making lewd comments.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And it's interesting because men saying I will learn and do better, fucking come on, it's 2021. Like, I'm
Like
sorry.
I know, but there was also a lot of that actually, funny enough, within the oh god, what's it called, the Black Lives Matter movement, and I saw a lot of that actually on the Facebook group. Say people, I will do better, and it's like, no one cares. Like, okay, people care, you know what I mean, but like, also stop trying to put yourself out there saying, by the way, look at me. It's kind of like looking for endorsement. Just go out and do it,
Just do it.
and go and
Yeah.
support. A, go out and do it. B,
Yeah.
go and support organizations that actually are doing the work to make it better.
Yeah.
B, support writers or people who are selling things, who are helping these people.
Yeah.
Go take an active role in it.
Mm,
Stop just paying lip service so you
mm,
can get likes and
mm,
comments
mm.
and Instagram, Facebook, whatever, TikTok
Yeah.
fame, social
It's the
media
difference
fame.
between virtue signaling and actually doing the
Yeah.
work. So um
Exactly.
for us two white people on a podcast, people, well, white-ish, but generally okay, it's that kind of are we allowed to even comment on Black Lives Matter? It's like, yes, of course we are. We
Of course.
absolutely are, because, and there's a lot of damage done in white social justice movements where there is this pressure to apologize on behalf of our ancestry. I'm sorry, I can't apologize for any racial injustice that was done in my history, but I can make damn sure that I honor the cultural heritage of everything that I,
Yeah.
accidentally appropriate today. On my Instagram stories last night, a
Oh,
fellow
yes.
coaching
Very good
student of
story.
mine,
Yeah.
she's amazing. She's Asian. I don't know her full history, so I'm probably like not giving all the credit, but she's just done an interview with another fellow Asian friend of hers, I think, talking about the Asian hate stuff that's going on in America. And it's like, there's so many nuances to this, but and I talk about, we've done whole podcasts on the ancient Chinese I Ching, and I did not comment on the Chinese heritage of that. And it's like, what? Okay, so I apologize. Like, I should have like made a nod to the fact that this is an ancient Chinese heritage that we have kind of like westernized and done all kinds of stuff with. So too with acupuncture, acupressure, herbalism to a degree. All of these things, we just bumble along in our lives, and we are genuinely overstepping certain people's boundaries, and nothing that I've ever done has ever been intentional, but I can do better, and I can say, this is not okay. And if anyone wants to go and listen to that video, I'll pop it somewhere, but her name is Katie Mazzara, Mazzara. Well worth following on Instagram just to keep on top of her work. Doesn't just do Asian hate stuff. She's actually a great financial coach. But there's just a lot to learn, and we need to learn it from people. But swinging back to the Me Too movement stuff, all of these movements have this kind of extrapolation that goes a little too far and a little too much and a little, but the essence of female abuse in society, because it's a patriarchal society, is still there, and it's still huge. There's a great video of, it was quite a while ago now, but a woman walking around New York with a camera on her.
Oh God, yeah, like all the cat calling and
All the
all the
time.
whistling.
It was
Yeah,
horrific, and she wasn't even dolled up. She wasn't wearing no clothes. She was wearing fairly regular jeans and a t-shirt, and it was just disgusting.
it's not
People
unusual, and that's
walking alongside her for minutes, just like stalking her
yeah,
down the street.
just staring, and that's where boundaries really need to come into play, and you need to, as a woman, I mean, okay, it's different as a man telling a woman what to do. I'm not trying to mansplain, but what I mean is, what he can do is just highlight to that person, by the way, please can you not do this, or please can you stop, or try and stop. If it's in the street, try and ask a passerby, do you mind just helping me support with this dude who's just following me?
And also
You know,
turning around to the person and saying, I'd love to know what in your rational head makes this behavior okay.
yeah, and a quick question to ask him is like, if I was your mother, how would you feel if a man was walking down the street behind her and staring at her? How would you feel if I was your mother and you were a different guy?
Yeah, yeah,
Honest to God, you would feel absolutely terrible.
yeah.
And I mean, I guess I'm lucky because I was raised by women, so to speak, and most of my Iranian family is women. So the question actually my father helped me pose a few times is like, if this was your sister or your mother, how would you like them to be treated?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So you phrase it and you understand from that aspect, you know, a boundary for
Mm,
yourself on how you
mm,
treat other people,
mm,
how you treat your girlfriends,
mm,
whether they be your girlfriends within friends or girlfriends within relationships.
mhm.
That could be also your wife, your fiance, whatever. Uh, Pose yourself that question and see where the boundary is and where the discomfort lies. And if there's discomfort, you got work to do.
And it's funny because I was going to say to you, like, I was going to ask you the question, what is it in men's brains that makes that okay? You're not going to know the answer because you're not that person. You're not the kind of person who is so, and I think it's insecurity. I think it's weak ego. I think it's all those kinds of things. But
Makes it okay for men to do what?
to
What do you mean?
stalk people down the street, to like,
Oh, it's okay. So I understand the concept.
okay.
It's very much the concept of hunting, primal, your prey,
Ugh.
predator prey. It's very, very, very base, lower side, but darker side of the chakra spectrum. And it's very much
Ooh.
like this is, and people the thing is, they're probably not aware of it themselves, but their lower base primal aspect comes out and it's very much that predatorial, I'm stalking my prey type of vibe. From like the core essence of it, that's what it is.
Right. Okay.
On a bit more higher level, not so core, it's very much I am just looking at a beautiful woman and it's literally like physical porn, so to speak. It's
Just like,
that type of vibe. It's kind of gross if I'm honest. And I don't know a single man who hasn't at least looked at a woman when she's walked by, and if she's walked in front and just stared at her. I think every single man has been guilty of that.
and I kind of get
Um,
that. I don't like when, I do it
but,
like I'm in Africa.
but to
And there are some
then,
very beautiful women who wander around and they wear no clothes and you're just like, okay. And they're
yeah,
beautiful. And you're just like, and that like is that's very different to like stalking some woman down a street and catcalling and saying, smile, love.
that's not okay. That is lowest of the low,
Yeah.
and where you know boundaries probably within the education system need to come in and say, okay, how do you respect a human being, not just a woman, but let's just say a human being. So that's everyone within the LGBTQI and normal unit and normal world, so to speak. So everyone can understand how to treat a normal human being and where your boundaries are,
Yeah.
and where the boundaries of others may be as well. So you are aware of it and cognizant of it,
Mm.
and you are made to walk a mile in the other person's shoes to see
Mhm.
how it would feel.
Mm. And
But the
to
weird
be
thing
clear,
is,
sorry, carry on.
a lot of men
Mm.
would probably not mind being, stalked by women. Because they're like, yes, I mean, okay, I'm gonna retract the statement. Certain men, that's what I would say. Certain men may like the idea that a woman is following them because to them it's like male ego. Yeah, she thinks I'm fit. I'm gonna have sex with her type of vibe.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's yeah. I have no idea. I don't think I've ever. Well, I've never stalked a man down the street, so I don't, I don't think I can like comment on like it's not my default thing to do on a random Saturday afternoon. No, it's man hunting.
No,
But I was just going to touch on the LGBTQI etc. stuff. Like I'm 34. The language has changed in my existence, and I'm not even like old. Like there's a lot of stuff that I fuck up right royally. I've had transgender patients and not known how to like my brain just couldn't get around the language. So
yeah,
yes, inadvertently, I have undoubtedly crossed somebody's boundaries, said something that misgendered somebody. I have said words that have potentially not allowed for their gender fluidity. I've said he instead of they, them. I've done all the things. And all I
yeah,
can do is honestly go, I don't understand this world. The gender thing, the gender question is a huge one, and probably another. I hope you're making a list of these, probably another topic for a podcast. But there is this kind of like, we don't have to get it right first time, but we do have to get it right over time and consistently. And that's for anybody who is in any kind of minority, being super sensitive about your boundaries, not okay, because we're all learning, we're all experimenting together. Laying it firmly and laying it a couple of times for people, absolutely within your rights to do. But not taking it super personally when somebody fucks up, because we do. Like, it's not,
and it's
natural yet.
like, no, I mean, it's like, you know, I will always revert to the other person. So like, are you faultless yourself? And like, you can tie in, I mean, it's may piss off a few people, and I make no apologies, but you know, Jesus said, he who, you know, God damn it, I now forgot the quote. It's about Jesus and he who casts the first stone type of vibe.
Yes.
He who had not sinned shall cast the first stone.
Yes.
And it's like, have you sinned? Yes. All right. Well, you can't throw the bloody first stone. Now, be compassionate, because we all make mistakes. You've made mistakes. We've made mistakes. Understand that certain people are trying their best. They may not know how to, because they may not have they may not know where to find the resources. So just be compassionate and help them understand, or be gentle about it, so that then they don't react negatively to it. If you're going to be very punchy and very ballsy and, you know, quite sharp, you will generally engender a negative reaction from that person, and it will jar them back and make them not want to really learn
a boundary.
Yeah,
exactly.
But if you are kind and you are gentle and you're compassionate and you're willing to explain, you're allowing them to feel safe, and therefore to understand where you're coming from and to learn. You may think, oh, it's not my job to make them feel safe. I'm like, it may not be your job, but it helps them to understand and to get them onto your side.
And to be honest, like, fuck you, it's always your job to make other people to feel safe. Like, that's our job in life. Like, life isn't that complicated.
That was a lie.
Life's kind of complicated, and yet at its core, there's really simple tenets that are very hard to get to, but they're really simple. And that is just have honesty, have integrity, show up in your absolute truth, whether that's messy as hell and completely confused, or completely together and like zen-like state of calm, and like allow other people to feel safe around you. Like, you should be a safe space for people to be them, because they're you would expect them to be a safe space for you to be you. So the best thing you can do is like reciprocate.
Very, very much so. And I think on that note, that is probably a very good place to end this marvelous podcast on boundaries.
With our final boundary.
Yeah, and our final boundary is the curtain that draws this to a close. And we will say to everyone, please like, subscribe, share, comment, do all the things if you would. If you have made it this far into the podcast, we would love to hear from you.
We would love to hear from you. I, again, have not checked our emails, so I will do that. speakingtruthtopowerpodcast@gmail.com. But DM us is the easiest way. Comments under our YouTube channel, videos. Leave us a review on Apple. I don't think we've had one thus far. I could go and leave us one and say how amazing we are, but I think that might be sort of nepotism. I don't know.
Slight nepotism, but it may be okay.
It may be allowed. Shall we just do it anyway? Anyway, leave us reviews. Yeah, we do have some subscribers. We've passed 100 downloads. We are doing swimmingly. So thank you to everyone who's supporting thus far. If there are any topics you'd like us to cover, we've just mentioned about 6 during this podcast that we will get onto, but we'll talk about anything and everything, as you may now know. So thank you very much, guys, and speak to you next week.
Bye.